but that she can see it's a very good thing. And I think that's huge. One of my other friends, the other one who became very upset initially, and again, she was upset because she was concerned for me. She felt that it was all because of my disability and meant that I was falling apart, and some cult had got hold of me and sort of filled my head with stuff. And she subsequently has also seen how much it's actually calmed and settled me and how much peace it's given me. It didn't take her very long at all to see that, and that's now not an issue at all. So basically everyone's very accepting of it these days. My decision to wear hijab, it just felt for me to be the natural thing to do. Because of the importance of modesty in Islam, and that's modesty not just for women, but for men in terms of the way you dress, but in terms of what you do with your wealth, how you show your wealth, all those sort of things, the whole concept of leading a modest life, seemed to me that hijab fitted that just perfectly. And it was also very clearly outlined as that was the appropriate way for a woman to behave. And I was very comfortable with that. So I started wearing hijab as soon as I took the Shahada. At that stage, only about 30% of the women in the Wellington community wore hijab, and I realised that later, once I became involved with the community, that a lot of the women were actually receiving quite negative reactions. Whereas I had quite a substantial advantage in the fact that I had blue eyes and white skin. So when people looked at me, because I normally walk with my head down because I have to concentrate on where I'm walking, they would look at me and sort of glare at me, and I'd look up and smile, and they were usually so shocked to see blue eyes and a white face that they just backed off. After September 11, things got very difficult in Wellington for women wearing hijab. Quite often we were actually targeted on the street, and I was personally a couple of times. And the way I responded to that was to try and go out in public with as much open face and as much a smile as I could. Any other woman I saw wearing hijab, I would say Assalamu alaikum to and smile, whether I knew them or not. The one time that it really, really upset me was we went to the airport, and people looked frightened. They saw me and I saw fear in their face. And that really, really got to me. And it was actually at that point that I decided that anyone who looked frightened, looked away, or looked aggressive towards me, I would just smile at. And I still do that. And it does actually make a difference. By the time the invasion of Iraq occurred, the sentiment, for want of a better word, on the street had changed quite a lot. In fact, a couple of people came up to me and said, I hope you don't get fallout from this. I really hope that people don't give you a hard time because you're Muslim, which I thought was really nice. I'm self-employed, so I don't need to deal with an employer's attitude, and I'm sure that also made it easier for me. I've only had 2 occasions in shops where people have been really bizarre. One, I was in Palmerston North with a friend of mine, and I desperately needed a haircut. And she said, well, my hairdresser, she works from home, it's down the back of her section, she only deals with women, there's no foot traffic, come down there. And so she took me down there and asked her hairdresser if she could fit me in. And the woman looked at me and said, why do you want a haircut? You wear a headscarf. And I sort of said, well, I only wear it out in public, I still want a nice haircut. And she just shook her head and said, no, and walked away, to the horror of my friend, and I sort of thought, whatever. The other sort of quite funny incident was when I went to buy my wetsuit, because I like to kayak, and I wear hijab when I'm kayaking. I wear my wetsuit on underneath my hijab, and then I wear my spray skirt on top of that, and then I wear my life jacket on top of that, and my headscarf, and usually a sun hat. And okay, it looks odd, but I get to go kayaking. And it was one of those really sort of hip, cool shops which primarily deal with teenagers and body surfers in Lambton Quay who had a sale on for wetsuits. And I went in and found one that looked like it might fit and tried to get the attention of the lady to say, you know, I'd like to try this on. And she just kept ignoring me. The shop was empty, except for her and her boss. And I finally said, look, I want to try this on, because the changing sheds were corrugated iron or something and they weren't obvious. And she said, why? And I said, well, I want to find out if it fits me. I mean, she was only about 20. And she said, well, why? And I said, well, I want to go kayaking. Is that the changing room? Can I go in there, please? And so I went in and got changed. And as I did, I heard her boss, who would have been all of sort of 22, come over and tell her off. And that you don't ever make assessments or assumptions on the basis of what people are wearing. And what was most interesting to me, I mean, he did it so strongly, I actually felt sorry for her. But what was most interesting to me was his primary concern was not that she might have missed a sale, but that she treated somebody badly. And that enormously impressed me. And I've been hugely impressed by the younger generations. Even around the time of September 11, I had sort of 13-year-olds coming up to me and saying, okay, that means you're one of them. Why is that? And having a very open attitude and listening to what I actually had to say. And at the end of it saying, oh yeah, okay, whatever, that's cool. And sort of wafting on their way. The other thing about hijab for me is I found it enormously freeing. Not just because I'd never have a bad hair day, but I became disabled in my 20s, and since I was about 24 I've walked with a walking stick. And prior to wearing hijab, people would always look at my walking stick and say, oh, you've hurt your leg. And I'd say, no, I'm disabled. And then they'd want my entire medical history, and basically the only conversation would be what I couldn't do, what was wrong with me. Whereas since I've been wearing hijab, the people that do notice it are much more interested in me these days and why I made the decision to become Muslim and what it's like being Muslim and those sort of things. And I've just found that hugely freeing. I, in the 80s, was working in a job where you had to power dress. I had to wear a different suit to work every single day. And then in the early 90s, I was working for another outfit, and they decided that we had to wear uniforms, the staff. The staff was 50-50 women and men. And then it turned out at the meetings they only wanted to put the girls in a uniform. And we were the one who wore suits to work, and the men could just wear jeans. And I just don't have any of those hassles anymore. And it does really focus people in on you as a person. I often hear people getting very upset on the media, sort of saying, well, you know, this is aggressive, and this is not New Zealand, and this is all sorts of things. And my response to that is always, I was born and bred in this country, and as long as I can remember, everyone has been allowed to wear whatever they like, as long as they follow basic standards of decency. So why does it matter to anyone else why I wear this? I'm not asking you to. And